And we continue at 2:07 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show, broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios. And it's a full house here at the casino. How's that for a double meaning? Mr. Randy Wags at the sports desk in Culver City.
John, I know it's Steely Dan Throwback Thursday, but we do have some breaking music news. I was just alerted at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com that it turns out Cecily Meyer Cruz was on Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon album.
Boy, I'm going to have to start paying close attention the next time I listen to KLOS. 800-222-KABC is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is a pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is a former Reagan White House official and a contributing writer to the American Spectator, Newsbusters, and the Daily Caller. And my pal from my days at CNN, Jeffrey Lord. Jeffrey Lord, welcome.
Hello there, my friend John Phillips. How are you?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, while the world is going to hell in a handbasket, we at least are okay.
Well, you never know what you're going to wake up to tomorrow, Jeffrey. We may have Speaker of the House, Jeffrey Lord.
Oh, my God. May that cup pass from my lips. But, you know, seriously, John, about tomorrow, one of the things I was learning, I am in Washington, as a matter of fact. I am down here for tonight's annual American Spectator dinner, which is at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, the former Trump Hotel. So on the drive down, I'm listening, and I learned that tomorrow has been declared Global Jihad Day. And there are, exactly, and that there are people out there threatening New York City at least, and it wouldn't surprise me if they sort of were playing a decoy game and it wound up somewhere else. But this does, I've since had a chance to sit down at my computer here in my hotel room and look at this. This is deadly serious stuff. And I noticed that Sean Hannity said he was going to, whose show was in New York, that he is going to give most of his staff the ability to work from home, which is to say outside New York City, because of this tomorrow. So, yikes.
Well, the world is certainly a volatile place right now, as we saw tragically in Israel with the terrorist attacks that were perpetrated by Hamas. And those attacks on Israel, Jeffrey, I regard not just as an attack on the Jewish faith or the people of Israel, but on Western civilization itself.
Yeah, I did a little research here, and one of the leaders of Iran said that he was, in essence, declaring war not just on Jews and the Jewish faith, but on Christians and Western civilization. That was exactly what he was talking about. And I don't have any doubt. When you look at the savagery, the sheer animal savagery that we are seeing that has been inflicted on Israelis. And, you know, for people like us that read history, you know that there have been people in the past. I mean, I don't have to mention names but I will, Hitler and Stalin and Mao, and you can go on back, Genghis Khan, et cetera, who set out to really destroy, you know, all kinds of people around them. And, you know, it just isn't good to think that, you know, as I've said on occasion, we may have moved from inventing fire to Apple MacBooks, but human nature itself has not changed. And that there are always, there are lots of good people, thank goodness, in the world, but there's always somebody out there who's a bad guy, as it were. And I think we need to be alert and aware that we're in one of those moments.
Initially, in the days after the attack, with the exception of the Democratic Socialist Association and their supporters, most people, most elected officials in particular here in the United States, voiced some kind of support for the people of Israel. As Israel responds to these terrorist attacks perpetrated by Hamas, do you feel that the political establishment in Washington, D.C. is going to stay behind Israel, or do you fear that they're going to turn on them?
No, I think they will. I mean, I just think that what's been done is so egregious and over the top. I was listening to a Republican congressman, Derek Van Orden, I guess his name is, from Wisconsin. And he was saying that pretty much not only all of his Republican colleagues, but with a handful of exceptions like the people in the so-called squad, most of his Democratic Party colleagues were all on the same page and wanting to support Iran. Support Israel. And I think that will stick. But I'll tell you, one of the things that I found vaguely amusing is this Rashida Tlaib, the congresswoman from Michigan, and outside her office, he has the Palestinian flag flying. And then you go a couple flags down, the American flag and some other flags. He has the LGBTQ rainbow flag. Apparently, nobody has pointed out to her that when Hamas is in control of areas, being gay is a crime for which you can be executed.
Who's going to tell her?
Clearly news to her. And the same thing goes in Iran. And I thought, man, these people have absolutely no idea what they're doing. None.
We're speaking with Jeffrey Lord, who you can read in the pages of Newsbusters and the American Spectator. Jeffrey, let's shift gears here for a second and talk about what's going on in Congress, because the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, was taken out by Matt Gaetz, a handful of Republicans, and all of the Democrats in the House. There appeared to be no plan B. There appeared to be no plan to replace him with someone else where the votes were lined up. They just wanted to take Kevin McCarthy out of office and then, I guess, figure it out after he was removed from the Speaker's chair. It looked like Steve Scalise, who is a congressman from Louisiana, part of Republican leadership, had the votes. They took the votes. He doesn't have the votes. So now we're back at square one, trying to find out who's going to be the next speaker. I guess Jim Jordan out of Ohio says, well, maybe he'll throw his hat back in the ring. And also there is Elise Stefanik from New York, who is also part of leadership and very close to former President Donald Trump, who may be in the running. Where do you see this going, and what the hell are they doing?
Well, I think your last question there is the good one. And I noticed right before you called, I was looking at, I guess it was Breitbart, and the headline, Breitbart or Newsmax, and the headline was that Scalise is hemorrhaging votes. That's not good. I mean, particularly under the circumstances that we're in with all of this Israel stuff going on, we need to have a speaker post haste to get on with things. Now, I myself had some understanding for what Matt Gaetz was trying to do, and I know that's probably an unpopular thing to say. But one of the things that I have noted, and I wrote a piece on this, God bless her, Margaret Thatcher, the late British conservative prime minister, in her memoirs, she talked about how she discovered what she called the socialist ratchet, which meant that a Labour government would win an election in Britain, move the government left, run out of steam. The Conservatives would come in and they just stand pat and not do anything other than try and manage it. And then they'd run out of steam and the cycle would repeat. And the point that I was making is that we've got too many Republicans who are, in essence, in this stand pat mode, that you've got leftists of all sorts doing things, and Republicans come along and say, oh, well, let's just do a little less of it. And one of the examples I used, I don't know if you recall this, but the 1980 Republican platform, and I was at that convention and played a role in working on it, called for the abolition of the then newly created Department of Education. Well, now Republicans are saying, well, let's just cut a budget a little bit. That's the socialist ratchet at work, and I think that was Kevin McCarthy's problem. And I think this problem is still there, and how we deal with it, patience is the key.
Well, a lot of people had problems with Kevin McCarthy. I certainly understand that. But if you're going to go through and you're going to take him out, you better have something in mind as to what you're going to do, and you better have the votes lined up.
I agree. In the long ago and far away, I worked in the House for a Pennsylvania congressman, and he was the head of the Bud Schuster from Pennsylvania, who sadly passed away a couple months ago at the ripe old age of 90. But he was chairman of the Republican Study Committee, as they call it in the House. And after the 1980 elections, he ran for Republican whip. And it was quite the race, quite a head-counting affair. And he lost to some guy named Trent Lott. Whatever happened to him? Who was then a House member for Mississippi and, of course, went on to be senator for Mississippi and all of that. But you really, when you're dealing with 435 members of the House, you really got to be able to herd the cats and count the votes. And if you can't do that, then your ability to be in leadership is going to be called into question on the spot.
And it just creates this impression that it's a clown show. It creates this impression that they're incapable of governing. And then you have a handful of them, and I'll throw Matt Gaetz and Nancy Mace and Lauren Boebert and others into this category, where it almost looks like they're just seeking attention, where they love the fact that they have the ability to cause everything to all business to stop. And then they go on TV. Yesterday, Nancy Mace was wearing the Scarlet Letter. She was wearing an A on her T-shirt. She regarded herself as being someone who was ascribed the Scarlet Letter, and then went out and did all of her media rounds with the full hair and the full makeup being done, and did all the channels. And you say to yourself, okay, they're auditioning for a role on cable news, and they're using their ability to gum up the government as their audition.
Well, and that's the thing, John. I just think they, or anybody who's trying to do what they're trying to do, they have to anticipate, particularly in the era of social media, that kind of impression can get out there, whether it's accurate or not accurate. And they need to be able to deal with it and do much better in terms of their own PR. And I don't think they got the game here yet.
No, and part of it, I think, is I don't think that they plan on sticking around the House. I think they plan on moving on to run for another office, whether it be governor of Florida for Matt Gaetz, or whether it be to go to cable news. There's this guy from Colorado who seems to be on CNN more than you and I were when we work there. There seems to be other motives at play.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you can never sort of write that off. Look, politics is about people with motives, not to mention ambition. And I always learned long ago, I learned the Washington saying that the only cure for Potomac fever was the grave. And I think that's pretty accurate.
There were a number of swing state polls that were released today coming from Emerson College, including states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. I think Michigan was one of them, too, that showed former President Donald Trump with a lead, either substantial or by just a couple of points in the case of Wisconsin, in every single one of those states. If he wins those states, he wins the election. Why do you think he's leading in all those states right now, and why do you think the spread is so large?
Well, one of the things that I learned a long time ago is that when you get to situations like this with an incumbent president, people are looking at their record. What have they done? What have they accomplished? And in this case, they're looking at Joe Biden. And as this situation, I mean, I'm looking at, just as I say, came into the hotel room. There's Fox News on here with the headline, "What a Gaza ground invasion could look like." I mean, people are seeing things like this. Not to mention that when they go to the grocery store, it costs them more for a dozen eggs. Not to mention when they go to the gas station, they're paying Well, in Pennsylvania, $4 a gallon. I've been reading in California it's as much as $7 a gallon. That kind of thing has an effect in these elections, and I think it is already showing up in the polls with an effect on a Biden-Trump runner-up. And Trump is out there, and I can give you a perfect close-up example here. You know, very shortly I'll be at this hotel. It was the Trump Hotel. It's now called the Waldorf Astoria in Washington. And, you know, it's about 500 conservative journalists and all of that kind of thing. And guess who sent us a video? You got it, Donald Trump. I haven't seen it yet, but I know we have it, and it's going to be run tonight. So he's out there.
All right. Jeffrey Lord, enjoy the dinner tonight. You can follow Jeffrey on Twitter at @RealJeffreyLord. Jeffrey, thanks so much for stopping by. Always a pleasure.
You bet, my friend, and buckle in.
All right. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, if you want to listen to a podcast edition of the show, and when we sign off at 3:01 or any other time, that is not hard to do.
That's right. Just go to the Apple App Store or the Android App Store and search for KABC AM. Download the new KABC app. Easiest way to listen live and the easiest way to download podcasts of this show. It's all there. The KABC app. Download it today.
The mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, publicly stated that she does not believe most homeless people were on drugs before they became homeless. She believed they picked up the drug addiction after they became homeless as a coping mechanism.
We also know that it's a chicken and egg issue. There's some people that believe that the unhoused population all suffer from mental health and substance abuse issues, and we know that that's not true. We know in many cases it's a chicken or egg situation, and I would ask everybody here how they might deal with their mental health and substance abuse vulnerability if you were living in a tent for a month or a week.
What say you? 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Let's go to Octavio in Whittier. Octavio, you're on KABC. Hello.
Hey, thanks for having me. So I was listening earlier to the caller before Jeffrey Lord, and I don't think he even heard the irony of what he was stating about his two friends who ended up homeless, and he kept mentioning them or describing the relationship as friends, and how one guy was able to get into a facility because of his health issues and somebody else had problems. And the thing that struck me is apparently they weren't your friends. They were acquaintances because you did apparently nothing to help them. And this is the thing that I find surprising, is that folks have acquiesced any personal responsibility to their community, to relationships, to family members, and just assume that the government is supposed to come in and fix all these problems so that they don't have to deal with it. And I also blame the churches as well. Now, I'm a practicing Catholic. I blame my church, Protestant faith. I think oddly, in some cases, as much criticism perhaps as Islam is taking right now, they are better at helping individuals who are on the streets. And what happened to the sense of humanity that we could know someone, call them a friend, and let them live on the street? It is, with no disrespect meant to that person that I've never met, maybe he's a great guy, I would say that he failed as a human being.
Well, I would go back to the initial premise of the topic, which is that Karen Bass is wrong. I think that for most of us, I don't know about you, but for me, if someone in my immediate family, someone who's a close friend, whatever the case may be, if, let's say, their job was outsourced to some other country and they were out of work, or they got some aggressive form of cancer, or something happened to them that was economically catastrophic and it was no fault of their own, I would not let them live on the streets. I would find a way to put a roof over their head, whether it be in my house or find some sort of housing for them. I would do what I could to make sure that they weren't in an encampment. However,
correct,
if they were addicted to hard drugs, or they had some kind of mental illness where they were a threat to me, a threat to themselves, or a threat to the people around them, I can't bring that in my home. And that's when I would say, here's the number for social services. Here's the number for AA. If I can help in that way, go ahead, let me know. But I can't have you in my house.
No, listen, you're absolutely right. And I think I'm glad you called me out on that. When an individual is an addict, alcohol, drugs, or whatever it might be, of course you don't need to bring that chaos into your home. You're not helping anybody. And this requires a more aggressive assistance like a facility. But I think, John, I think you're selling yourself short. I don't think you would just give them a number. I think you would be the guy calling on the phone when you have the time. You would be the guy either getting them transported or transporting them yourself to a facility. And I'm not speaking theory. I've had in my home with my family, whether it's women leaving an institution, women who were being beaten by their husbands, somebody struggling with heroin, a family member we had lived in our house for 3 years as we helped them get clean and sober. We've had folks who were visiting from out of the country trying to get their papers and squared away, and when it didn't work out, we helped them right back to the airport to go back home. There is a sense of humanity that is being lost and assumes that this faceless government is supposed to step in and solve these problems. And I say that is nonsense.
Thank you for the call, sir. I appreciate it. It is 2:34. If you'd like to weigh in, 800-222-KABC. Let's go back to the phones at 800-222-KABC and begin with Kevin in San Clemente. Kevin, you're on KABC. Hello.
Hello. Thanks for taking my call. I want to mention this goes way back in the 80s when their Mental Health Systems Act of 1980 was passed by Jimmy Carter, but then I don't like President Reagan, but he defunded most of these programs. And then you have institutions like the NAACP and the ARP that don't allow people to 5150, those mentally ill, homeless people, and get them the help that they need, which is really sad. We're not allowed to restrain them and keep them in a facility that we could, or an institution where training can happen and health care can happen until they are able to leave and succeed on their own. But here's the thing that I want to say most of all to your listeners, and the housing issue. Back in the 40s and right after World War II, our government created these loans that were available for homeowners that could mortgage or finance a home for 30 years. If you happen to be colored or black or Hispanic, whatever, and lived in a neighborhood, that property was redlined and it went down 30%. So nobody wanted these residential areas in these suburbs to have interracial residents. And what that did is it created a rental program for those unfortunate that to be born in the skin color. And 30 years later, the homeowners could take the appreciation of the home, care for their elderly, send their kids to college, and they were able to succeed. Now, today, we are allowing China and Blackstone to buy every residential property that exists today. By 2035, Blackstone will own over 60% of residential properties, turning us and everybody into renters. Now, the problem is we have to stop allowing foreigners or these big corporations to buy existing real estate or residential properties. If they want to own residential properties and turn them into rentals, have them build new inventory, period. Get their asses out. Let's bring the housing prices down to where people could afford to live in a house at an income percentage of maybe 35% of their earnings, 60 tops. But right now, 90% of your income going to a mortgage just doesn't make sense. We've got to stop that. I put a website up called homelightsact.com.
Okay, then we're done.
I had a feeling we were going there. Didn't know when it would transition, But after a certain point, I thought, all right.
I was looking for an off-ramp, and that turned into a high-speed chase.
Let's go to John in Los Angeles. John, you're on KABC. Welcome.
Hey, fellas. Good afternoon. So, she promised 100 days she would fix the homeless issue, and she didn't. And, I'm kind of getting tired of these identity politics. They didn't want to pick Caruso because he's a white guy. But guess what? Mayor Reardon was a white guy, and he made the city great. I think the entire city would look like the Commons in Calabasas or like the Grove by now had we elected Caruso because he's very pro-police. So I don't understand why people just vote, through identity politics. Like, look at Kamala, for example. I would, and it's not because of her identity. I would pick Candace Owens to be VP anytime, because she really cares and truly loves this country.
Thank you for the call, sir. I appreciate it. Let's go to Matt in Santa Clarita. Matt, you're on KABC. Welcome.
John, love the show. The word that keeps going through my head when I hear Karen Bass talking, and then I heard your commentator from CNN, your buddy there, the word that keeps going through my mind is exhaustion. And, everything about right now, life in California and life in this country, and I think it's being reflected in the polls, is just it's exhausting to live right now. And dealing with the homeless and then having somebody like Karen Bass basically lie to your face and say that the addiction happened after homelessness. It's just insulting. It's insulting to any rational person's intelligence. I'm a recovering addict, and anybody that I've dealt with through my process, the substance abuse always led to the consequences, and it's people who have chosen that substance over a normal, over a quote unquote normal life, who ended up in that predicament. So her saying that, I think, is a way to try to get the quote-unquote average Angelino or average Californian, however you want to put it, to get them to say, well, this could be you. Well, no, it couldn't be you. If you stayed off that substance, which at the end of the day, there are very few people who have a predilection for mental illness. It's the substance that sends it into overdrive. And to insult my intelligence and to insult the intelligence of the voters and residents of this area is just is beyond comprehension. But we keep voting for it, so I don't know what to say.
Thank you so much for the call, sir. I appreciate it. All right, Randy, I think we have to clear the lines right now because we have tickets to give away.
That's right. Thanks so much, everyone, for calling in. If you didn't get on, we'll definitely be picking this up again soon. We appreciate it. You can always email us at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Unfortunately, the show is not 4 hours. 790 KABC welcomes Adam Sandler to the Acrisure Arena on October 21st. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster.com. But right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-790-5222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. Tickets furnished by Live Nation. Good luck dialing.